Every person who has lived with a cat has felt this. The animal settles onto the lap, or the chest, or the thigh, and begins to purr. The vibration is subtle, a low rumble felt through clothing, through skin, into the tissue underneath. The warmth is pleasant. The sound is calming. You stroke the cat and think about something else entirely. What you have never considered is what is physically entering your body through the contact surface. The purr is not merely sound radiating into the room. It is mechanical vibration, a pressure wave at 25 to 50 Hz, at amplitudes Muggenthaler measured for the Acoustical Society of America that meet clinical vibration therapy thresholds. That vibration transmits directly from the cat's rib cage through the contact point into your tissue. It does not stop at the skin. It propagates inward, through the fascia, through the muscle, through the periosteum, and into the bone beneath. How it gets there, why the cat must be touching you for it to work, and why the specific location on your body determines which bones receive the vibration. The engineering of this transmission is the physics you have never been told about. Sound traveling through air loses energy rapidly. The vibration from a purring cat radiating outward through a room attenuates with the inverse square of distance. By 1 meter from the cat, the vibrational amplitude reaching your body through air is less than 1% of the amplitude at the cat's skin surface. By 3 meters, across a typical living room, the signal disappears into the ambient vibration of the building. You hear a faint hum. Your skeleton receives almost nothing. The acoustic energy arriving through air at the typical distance between a cat on the floor and a person on the sofa is so attenuated that it falls far below any measurable biological threshold. Your ear detects the purr. It evolved to register vibrations in air at vanishingly small amplitudes. Your skeleton does not. It requires direct mechanical input at amplitudes the air cannot deliver across any meaningful distance. The distinction between audible and biologically active is the distinction between entertainment and therapy, and the boundary between them is the contact surface where the cat's tissue meets yours. Contact transmission follows different physics entirely. When the cat's vibrating ribcage presses directly against your body, the vibration transfers through a principle called impedance matching, a concept from acoustic engineering that governs how efficiently mechanical vibration crosses from one material to another. The principle applies to every boundary between two materials: sound hitting a wall, vibration crossing from metal to plastic, mechanical energy moving from one biological tissue to another. Two materials with similar acoustic impedance, similar density, similar elasticity, similar speed of sound, transfer vibration efficiently between them at their boundary. Two materials with dramatically different impedance reflect most of the vibration at the boundary, sending it back rather than allowing it through. Air and human tissue have dramatically different acoustic impedance. The mismatch between air and skin reflects over 99% of incoming vibrational energy at the body's surface. The vibration bounces off rather than entering. This is why a purring cat across the room delivers essentially zero mechanical input to your skeleton despite being clearly audible. The sound you hear is real. The vibration reaching your bones is not. The entire therapeutic value of the purr depends on whether it arrives through air or through contact, and the impedance physics at the boundary determines which. Cat tissue and human tissue have similar acoustic impedance. Both are soft biological tissue with comparable density, comparable water content, comparable elastic properties. The impedance ratio between cat muscle and human muscle is close to 1, meaning the boundary between them is nearly acoustically transparent, allowing vibration to cross with minimal energy loss. When the cat's ribcage contacts your skin directly, the impedance match allows the vibration to cross the boundary with minimal reflection. The mechanical energy passes through the contact surface almost as if the boundary were not there. Instead of over 99% bouncing off, the number for an air tissue boundary, the majority of the mechanical energy enters your tissue and propagates inward toward the skeleton beneath. Direct tissue contact converts the cat's vibration into a mechanical input the skeleton can receive. An air gap, any air gap at all, regardless of distance, converts that same source into background noise that the skeleton cannot detect. Contact is the mechanism. Remove the contact and the therapeutic transmission disappears entirely, regardless of proximity. A cat purring on the same bed but not touching, across the sofa with a cushion between you, on the floor beside your chair. The air boundary eliminates the transmission. Everything that follows depends on this single condition, surface-to-surface contact between two impedance-matched biological materials. Vibration entering the body through impedance-matched contact does not maintain full amplitude as it travels inward. It attenuates, loses energy gradually, as it passes through each tissue layer, absorbed by the mechanical resistance of the material it traverses. The rate of attenuation depends on the frequency of the vibration and the specific mechanical properties of each tissue layer. Low-frequency vibration attenuates slowly in soft tissue. At 25 to 50 Hz, the wavelengths are long, approximately 30 to 60 centimeters in soft tissue at these frequencies, meaning the vibration can travel through the full thickness of a human thigh or torso before losing the majority of its amplitude. Higher frequencies attenuate much faster. A 500 Hz vibration loses most of its energy within the first few centimeters. The cat's purring frequency is optimally suited for deep tissue penetration, sitting in the narrow range where the wavelength is long enough to traverse centimeters of mixed tissue without catastrophic energy loss. The cat purrs at the frequency its laryngeal anatomy produces, and the result is a vibration that penetrates deeper into human tissue than almost any other biological vibration source. Each layer the vibration passes through: epidermis and dermis, subcutaneous fat, fascia, skeletal muscle, periosteum, cortical bone, absorbs a small fraction of the vibrational energy. By the time the wave reaches bone, typically 2 to 6 centimeters below the skin surface depending on the body region, it has lost approximately 30 to 50% of its original amplitude. Even after that reduction, the amplitude reaching the bone surface still meets or exceeds the thresholds that clinical vibration therapy platforms prescribe for bone density maintenance in adults over 50. Low-magnitude mechanical signals at these amplitudes stimulate measurable bone formation, as Rubin and colleagues demonstrated in Nature in 2001, showing that vibrations below 1 G produce significant increases in bone density in weight-bearing skeletal regions. The finding was striking because the amplitudes were far below what anyone had previously considered mechanically significant. Fractions of gravitational acceleration, gentler than the vibration of a truck engine, felt through a steering wheel. The bone needed only to be oscillated, gently, persistently, at the right frequency. And the cat's purr does precisely that, at precisely those amplitudes, for durations that approach clinical protocol levels. Where the cat sits determines which skeletal structures receive that input, and the anatomy of each contact site creates a different dosimetry profile with different clinical implications. On the lap, the cat delivers vibration to the femoral neck, the narrow bridge of bone connecting the femoral head to the femoral shaft, sitting approximately 3 to 5 centimeters below the skin at the anterior thigh when seated. The femoral neck is structurally vulnerable because it combines a thin cortical shell with a trabecular interior that loses density progressively with age. The bone thins from inside, while the outer shell remains deceptively intact on imaging until the density drops below the fracture threshold. It is the most common site of osteoporotic fracture in adults over 65, the fracture carrying a 20 to 30% one-year mortality. Clinical vibration platforms target this bone through the feet, requiring the vibration to travel the full length of the tibia and femur, with attenuation accumulating at every joint interface along the way. The cat delivers it directly through 3 to 5 centimeters of soft tissue, a shorter, more efficient transmission path with far less cumulative attenuation. On the chest, the cat delivers vibration to the sternum, sitting immediately beneath the skin with minimal soft tissue coverage, approximately half a centimeter to 1 centimeter of depth. Vibration from a cat lying on your chest reaches the sternum at near full amplitude. Almost no attenuation, the bone receiving essentially what the cat's skin surface produced. The thoracic vertebrae are deeper, 8 to 12 centimeters through the chest cavity, but the ribs act as waveguides, transmitting vibration laterally around the thorax and conducting the mechanical wave to the vertebral bodies through the costovertebral joints. Bone conducts vibration more efficiently than soft tissue. The ribs carry the oscillation around the chest wall with less attenuation per centimeter than a direct path through the soft tissue of the chest cavity would produce. The rib cage does not block the vibration. It redirects it along bony pathways that deliver the oscillation to the spine through a route that air transmission could never reach, and that even direct soft tissue penetration would attenuate beyond usefulness. Well, on the abdomen, the dosimetry changes again. The lumbar vertebrae sit approximately 6 to 10 centimeters below the anterior abdominal wall, deeper than the sternum or femoral neck, with more soft tissue in the transmission path. The vibration reaching the lumbar spine from a cat on the abdomen is reduced compared to chest or lap contact, but the frequency is low enough to traverse the full abdominal depth before losing the majority of its amplitude. The abdominal organs between the contact surface and the spine, stomach, intestines, liver, each receive the vibration as it passes through, and the vagal branches innervating the digestive tract run through this tissue. A cat on the abdomen during sleep delivers low-frequency vibration to the digestive vagal network during the parasympathetic window, the same autonomic state that governs digestive motility and repair. The lumbar spine receives a reduced but measurable skeletal dose. Cats gravitate toward warmth. The thigh, the chest, the abdomen, which means the cat's natural preference for contact sites aligns with the anatomical locations where bone sits closest to the skin surface. Nobody designed this alignment. The physics and the animal behavior converge incidentally. The cat's thermal comfort-seeking behavior places it on precisely the surfaces where the impedance-matched transmission path to clinically significant bone is shortest. The cat choosing your lap over the sofa cushion is choosing the warmest available surface. The consequence of that thermal preference is that the vibration enters at the anatomical site where the shortest possible tissue path delivers it to the most clinically significant bone. The femoral neck, the fracture site that carries the highest mortality, reach through the least amount of attenuation. You now know how the vibration enters. Impedance-matched contact at the boundary, frequency-optimized attenuation through the tissue, and where the bone sits relative to each contact site. The question changes from where the vibration arrives to what each tissue layer does with it on the way down, and why the timing of the delivery matters more than any parameter of the vibration itself. Vibration does not skip through tissue to reach bone. It passes through every layer sequentially, and each layer responds to the mechanical input through its own physiology. Fascia, the connective tissue wrapping every muscle, organ, and bone, contains mechanoreceptors that respond to sustained low-frequency vibration. Ruffini-Andings and Pacinian corpuscles embedded in the fascial network detect the 25 to 50 Hz oscillation and send proprioceptive signals to the central nervous system. The calm you feel when a cat purrs on you has a mechanical basis. The fascial mechanoreceptors are generating a measurable output that downregulates sympathetic tone and shifts the autonomic balance toward the parasympathetic state. Skeletal muscle responds to this vibration through the tonic vibration reflex, a sustained subconscious contraction at the frequency of the input, as Roll and Vettel identified in experimental brain research in 1982. At 25 to 50 Hz, the reflex produces gentle tonic activation that maintains muscle tone without fatigue. The frequency range used in clinical vibration therapy for sarcopenia prevention. The vibration itself recruits the motor units at a level sufficient for maintenance but below conscious perception. You do not feel your thigh muscles contracting when the cat purrs on your lap, but the motor units are firing. And then, the vibration reaches the periosteum and the bone beneath it. The periosteum is densely innervated with mechanoreceptors that interpret the vibrational input as mechanical load, triggering the osteocyte mechanotransduction pathway, the pathway that impact loading activates, the cellular response, the bouncing discussion described. Sustained oscillation rather than discrete impact, but the biological endpoint converges, new bone matrix deposition along the lines of mechanical stress. The osteocytes embedded within the bone matrix detect the vibration through fluid flow in the canalicular network, the fluid shear mechanism that registers footfall impact, and signal the osteoblasts on the bone surface to begin laying down new matrix. The vibration also increases periosteal blood flow, enhancing the delivery of calcium and phosphate ions the osteoblasts require as raw material for the new matrix they are building. The response is binary. Once the vibration exceeds the minimum mechanical signal the osteocyte network detects, the building response activates regardless of whether the amplitude is 1/10 of a G or 1 G. Below the threshold, nothing happens. Above it, deposition begins. Bone formation rate increased significantly with low-frequency vibration at amplitudes below 1 G, as Chin and colleagues established in the Journal of Biomechanics in 2003, demonstrating that the response was frequency-dependent and peaked in the range the cat's purr naturally occupies. The bone requires only sustained, low-magnitude oscillation at the right frequency to initiate the building response. 25 to 50 Hz is precisely the frequency where the response is strongest, and this is not arbitrary. Trabecular bone, the spongy interior structure that gives the femoral neck and the vertebral bodies their load-bearing capacity, has natural resonant modes in the 20 to 50 Hz range. The purr frequency matches the mechanical resonance of the bone tissue it reaches. A vibration at resonance transfers energy more efficiently than one at any other frequency. The bone amplifies the signal rather than passively absorbing it. Holding my hand flat against my cat's ribcage while she purred, fingers spread, palm pressed against the fur, I felt the vibration transmitting through my palm into the metacarpals and the carpal bones of my wrist. The amplitude was unmistakable. A physical oscillation I could feel in my hand, bones the way you feel, a tuning fork pressed against your knee. The transfer that the chest receives when the cat lies on it, that the femur receives when the cat sits on the lap. I could feel it running through my hand. Every cat owner has been feeling this delivery mechanism without recognizing what it was. Bone remodeling is circadian, osteoblast activity, the building phase of the remodeling cycle. Peaks during the nighttime hours, coordinated by circadian clock genes expressed in bone cells themselves, as Kawai and colleagues documented in the Journal of Bone and Mineral Research in 2014. The resorption phase, osteoclast activity, the tearing down phase, peaks during the day, when cortisol is highest and the body is mobilizing calcium from the skeleton to meet the metabolic demands of movement and stress. The body dismantles bone during waking hours and rebuilds it during sleep. The cycle is genetically regulated, hormonally reinforced and synchronized with the rest of the circadian machinery. Melatonin release, cortisol rhythms, temperature regulation, growth hormone secretion all follow the same 24-hour clock. It cannot be overridden by willpower or lifestyle. The osteoblasts follow their clock regardless of what the owner of the skeleton is doing. The question for any mechanical input reaching bone is whether it arrives during the building phase or the dismantling phase, and the answer determines whether the signal produces new bone or lands on cellular machinery that is not primed to respond. During the afternoon, a cat purring on your lap delivers vibration during the resorption dominant phase. Osteoblasts are less active. Their transcription of bone matrix proteins is at its circadian low. Cortisol is near its daytime peak, actively suppressing the anabolic response. The mechanical stimulus lands when the bone-building machinery is running at reduced capacity and the hormonal environment is working against the building signal. The vibration arrives, the osteocytes detect it, the mechanotransduction pathway activates, but the downstream response is blunted by the circadian context. The signal is present. The system is in the wrong phase to fully act on it. During sleep, a cat delivering identical vibration at identical amplitude encounters a fundamentally different biological state. Osteoblasts are maximally active. Growth hormone, the primary anabolic signal for tissue repair, is circulating at its highest nighttime concentration, released in pulsatile bursts from the anterior pituitary during the first hours of deep sleep. Cortisol, which suppresses bone formation during the day, drops to its circadian nadir. The body is in parasympathetic dominance, the autonomic state that suppresses inflammatory cytokines, reduces catabolic signaling, and creates the cellular conditions under which bone deposition proceeds most efficiently. Into this environment, the cat's vibration delivers its mechanical signal, and the convergence of conditions is remarkable. The osteoblasts are active and primed to respond to mechanical load. The growth hormone circulating in the blood amplifies the osteoblast response to that load, actively potentiating the cellular response to mechanical stimulus beyond what the osteoblasts would produce on their own. Growth hormone peaks in the first 90 minutes of deep sleep and remains elevated throughout the night, creating a sustained window during which every single mechanical signal reaching bone receives an amplified response. The cortisol that would normally blunt the response is at its lowest concentration of the entire day. Cortisol suppresses osteoblast activity through direct receptor binding on the bone cell surface. and its absence during sleep removes the brake that daytime cortisol applies. The parasympathetic state has shifted the immune profile from inflammatory to reparative, reducing the circulating levels of cytokines that interfere with bone deposition. Every component of the bone-building system is at its daily peak of readiness, and the cat's vibration provides precisely the mechanical input that the osteoblasts interpret as a signal to build. The window is open and the signal arrives. Now, the sleep window is the highest leverage contact window. The cat that sleeps on you delivers the mechanical signal during the nighttime anabolic window, the hours when every component of the bone-building system is at its daily peak. None of this is designed. The cat purrs for its own physiological regulation. The circadian rhythm follows its own clock. The growth hormone peaks according to its own pituitary schedule. But the result is that nighttime contact aligns the vibration delivery with the biological window of maximum skeletal response. Every person who has pushed a cat off their lap at bedtime has interrupted a vibration therapy session that the bone was biologically primed to receive. The cat would have stayed. The impedance match was in place, the contact was established, and the only missing element was the decision to let it continue. Domestic cats purr for an average of 90 minutes per day, distributed across waking and sleeping hours in intermittent bouts. A cat that sleeps on you for a typical night delivers 4 to 6 hours of contact, with purring bouts lasting 10 to 30 minutes separated by quiet intervals as the cat cycles between purring and quiet sleep. The purring is not continuous throughout the night. It follows a natural biological rhythm of activation and rest that the cat controls entirely without conscious awareness, driven by the laryngeal oscillation that sustains the purr on both inhale and exhale phases of respiration. Most animal vocalizations occur only during exhalation. The cat's bilateral laryngeal mechanism produces vibration during both respiratory phases, doubling the duty cycle compared to a vocalization that pauses with each inhalation and delivering an effectively continuous mechanical signal during each purring bout. Clinical whole-body vibration therapy prescribes 10 to 20 minutes per session, 3 to 5 sessions per week, a total weekly dose of 30 to 100 minutes at calibrated, consistent amplitude. Consistent amplitude. The clinical platforms are large, expensive, and require the user to stand on them for the prescribed duration, a commitment that most people abandon within weeks. Cat delivery differs from the clinical platform in several respects. The delivery is intermittent rather than continuous, variable in amplitude as the cat shifts position, with contact surfaces that change as the animal moves during the night. The comparison is not precise. Clinical delivery is calibrated and consistent. The cat's delivery is intermittent and variable. Even so, the cumulative purring duration during a single night's contact approaches or exceeds the total weekly duration of clinical sessions. At a frequency and amplitude that meets the therapeutic parameters, through a delivery mechanism more efficient than the platform's longer transmission path because the impedance-matched contact delivers vibration directly to the target bone. The dosimetry favors the cat on every parameter except consistency, and the consistency gap may matter less than it appears. The intermittent delivery pattern, with natural rest intervals between purring bouts, mirrors the pulsed vibration protocols the clinical researchers have found produce stronger bone responses than continuous exposure at equivalent total duration. The cat's delivery pattern is not a deficit, it may be an advantage. Consider the cumulative arithmetic across a week. 7 nights of cat contact at 90 minutes of intermittent purring per night yields approximately 630 minutes of total vibration exposure. More than 10 hours of mechanical input delivered to the skeleton through impedance-matched contact. Even accounting for the intermittent delivery, the cat cycling between purring and quiet sleep, and the variable amplitude as the cat shifts position during the night, the weekly exposure from a sleeping cat exceeds the clinical dose by a factor of 5 or more. The cat purrs for self-soothing, for pain management, for social bonding. The laryngeal oscillation serves the cat's own physiology entirely. The physics requires only one thing from both parties: contact. A 4-kilogram animal doing what it would naturally do anyway, settling onto a warm human body and purring, while the warm surface happens to be a human body containing a skeleton that responds to exactly the frequencies the cat produces. That dosimetry, the frequency, the amplitude, the impedance match, the circadian alignment, the cumulative duration, is why I let the cat stay through the night. Not as comfort, as an engineering decision. The removal I used to perform at bedtime. Lifting the cat off my legs because of weight or warmth, or the inconvenience of a 4-kilogram animal pinning the blanket, was interrupting a mechanical input that the bone was circadian primed to receive. The cat was delivering precisely what the bone needed, at precisely the time the bone needed it, and I was stopping the delivery because the cat was heavy. The engineering reframe changed the decision entirely. The cat stays. And then, a practical note on fabric. A thin blanket between you and the cat does not significantly attenuate the vibration. The impedance mismatch introduced by a single layer of cotton or flannel is negligible at 25 to 50 Hz. These fabrics are acoustically transparent at the frequencies the cat produces because the fibers are thin enough and flexible enough to transmit the vibration without absorbing meaningful energy. The fabric vibrates with the cat rather than absorbing the vibration from it. A thick duvet does introduce measurable attenuation. The trapped air within the duvet's fill creates a secondary impedance boundary, an air layer that reflects vibrational energy before it reflects vibrational energy before it reaches the skin. The practical threshold is contact through clothing or a single sheet. The cat on your lap through trousers, on your chest through a t-shirt, on your thigh through a bedsheet. One layer of fabric, no air gap. The impedance match holds. Anyone with a bone-anchored implant, a recent fracture under healing, or a condition affected by sustained vibration should discuss vibrational loading with their physician. The mechanical input from a purring cat, while low in amplitude, is sustained and repetitive, and some conditions warrant caution about any vibration source. A 4-kilogram animal settles onto your thigh and closes its eyes. Its laryngeal muscles begin oscillating 25 to 50 times per second on the inhale and on the exhale without pause. 4 engineering parameters: impedance matching, frequency optimized transmission to site-specific bone, circadian alignment, cumulative duration, converging incidentally in a single behavior. The cat does not know what it is delivering. You did not know what you were receiving each time. The physics requires nothing except contact.